you haven't educated anyone. You haven't done anything. All you've done is set something on fire.
Welcome to Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations, where we help people explode into their lives through full impact mindfulness. The only entrance requirements are the honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness to try, and if you have a few pixie dust sprinkles of each one of those, you're on your way. Welcome aboard and let the adventure begin. Well, today I'm delighted to perhaps introduce you to my good friend and an excellent friend and actually a co-producer of this show and many of my own endeavors, Missy Sorg.
Hi, thanks, Jim. I'm happy to be here on the couch with you as always. Rare appearances, but I like to think that means that the conversations we're going to have are that much more important.
As rarely as you come, it's nevertheless any delightful to see you today.
Always a pleasure to see you as well.
So, we've just gone through I don't know how you would describe this campaign season. How would you describe it, Missy?
This campaign season was chaos and craziness with a bit of WTF. And that coming from, as I'm sure we're going to discuss here, the side of things that you wouldn't expect to be saying that.
Well, I want to inform everybody and be transparent that Missy and I are longtime friends. However, we have different views on many different subjects. However, the one subject that we can agree on, that we have been friends for a long time and that we care about each other.
Absolutely. I definitely consider you within my close friendships, and I appreciate the friendship that we have.
Well, that's kind of you to say. However, in our conversations off air and during this campaign season, even before, you were quite disillusioned by the number of people who supposedly were close friends who developed some labels about you.
Yeah. I've had some friends that disagree with me ideologically on a few different things, and some of those friends I no longer talk to. And it's kind of what's changed other than the fact that you know this about me now. What has changed in the grand scheme of things? Other friends, I've completely just blown their minds, and they've kind of taken a step back and thought about things, and we've since had conversations. And I like that people can be adults when they have differing opinions and can talk it through. My goal is never to change your mind on something, but maybe there's something that I can educate you about that helps you understand why I side the way that I do, and also to open the conversation of maybe this is an aspect of this that you hadn't thought about before. And again, not looking to change minds, but maybe trying to open the door for conversation.
So how many people do you think looked at a conversation with you as the opportunity to know where you formed your opinions and what's behind them?
I'm going to say it's probably been about 25 to 30%. There's probably 50 to 65% that don't know where I stand on things. And then that other percentage are the friends that I no longer have relationships with, not because of my choice or my decision on anything, but they've unfriended me from social media. They've stopped messaging me. They've stopped talking to me. And some of them, a very small percentage of that group, have blatantly just been very mean and, called it out that because you think this way or because you feel this way, I can no longer be friends with you. And they just kind of draw that line in the sand.
Well, generally in life, there's a philosophy called reciprocity, which generally means that you expect to receive what you give.
then there's life where that doesn't always happen. And like I said, there have been a few of my friends that I can have a differing opinion with, and we can have conversations. There was one conversation that I recall, car ride home from a work event, and captive audience type of situation. But I knew that I was in I was in a friendly environment under the circumstances, and I asked this person, I don't understand this view on something. Can you explain it a little more to me? And they were like, oh yeah, absolutely. So that they explained what their perception on everything was for the opposite side of the argument that we were having. And again, argument is not, it wasn't an argument, but opposite side of the discussion. And when they explained it, I was like, oh, okay, that now makes a little bit more sense to me. I still don't necessarily, I'm not going to accept that as my belief in anything, but I appreciate that it's your belief and your understanding of it. And I can have that mutual respect of, okay, this is how you feel. I'm okay with that. Same thing. They asked me some questions, and I was very flat out honest with them. And at the end of me explaining my aspect of it, they're like, I never really thought of it that way. And now that you put it into that perspective, I can see that comparison now. And it's really funny how that works, because again, this person, I know that they don't see eye to eye with me, but we can still have a polite and respectful conversation of it. And if one of us does start pushing the line that, we're getting into a topic that we don't want to be talking about, the two of us can look and say, okay, I don't want to talk about that, or I'm not comfortable talking about that. And we change the topic. And I wish that more friendships and more conversations and more relationships were like that.
So what you're talking about is active listening rather than debating.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's on both sides of that. So I'm not expecting you, for instance, I'm not expecting you to just actively listen to me and then me not return that favor.
Well, generally, Missy, I've found generally that if you treat people with courtesy and respect, you generally receive the same. How I know that's one of my favorite things to say, but how has that worked out in real time in the real world with real people with you?
Most of the time it has worked. There have been other times when, I've shown up on somebody's door to have a general conversation with them about a particular political candidate, for instance, and I'm just disseminating as a volunteer for the community. I am disseminating information about a particular candidate, and I have had people come to the door and tell me to get off their property. I haven't even said anything. I haven't introduced myself. I haven't done any of that, and they're just telling me to get off of their property. They know that I am there for supporting a certain candidate because I'm wearing a certain shirt, and they see that and they just don't want to immediately shut down.
Well, in the 12-step world, we often talk about, there is a quote by a gentleman by the name of Herbert Spencer, and that quote was, there's a principle which will keep a person in everlasting ignorance, and that principle is contempt prior to investigation.
I like that because it, I think, explains that idea of a preconceived notion, and therefore I'm not going to allow anything to break that preconceived notion. I think in a general context, it's, I have heard a lot about this person, or I have, seen what this person has said online or what, and then when I meet them, that's solely the lens that I'm looking at them through, instead of actually meeting them, interacting with them, and allowing that interaction to be.
So these type of conversations that you would or got engaged in, how many of them were based on a matter of mutual respect?
I don't know, especially given the current political climate. I don't know that there's a level of respect, and this is for both sides of the fence on things. I don't think that there's a level of respect that is given when you get to, in a bell curve, you get to that outer limit on things where it's the extreme parts of things. But I think more so in the middle, where the majority of the populace is, I do think that there is more expectation for a mutual kind of a discord type of situation. Even talking with people on my own side that are in the extremist level, I get that immediate shutdown if I say anything that goes against their standards. And it's kind of an interesting thing to kind of look at, I think, under the circumstances.
So what you're talking about is people automatically assume certain things about you.
Absolutely. If I show up wearing something that is a tell as to who I am and what I am, there's that kind of instantaneous. You can kind of see the person's demeanor. They kind of block off and don't want to open up a conversation. If they do talk to you, it's very short, very brief, very limited type of situation. Whereas if I go into a conversation where somebody doesn't know, or it's not as obvious, I can actually have a conversation similar to what you and I are having right now. That it's a conversation. It's open. There's no hostility. There's no disagreement, just based on principle.
I think one of the biggest misnomers is let's fight nice. If you term something a fight, that means somebody's trying to win, which means somebody is trying to prove the other person wrong.
I agree with you on that. See, I did not try to prove you wrong there. No, I do absolutely agree with you on that, though. And again, it's that mindset of something. If I'm going in to win this, I'm not going to give. I'm not going to concede. I'm not going to give anything. Like I mentioned, the conversation with my friend before. Those conversations, it's not, I'm going to try to win this argument. I want to understand why somebody might feel this way. I want to understand what I don't understand is kind of what it boils down to. Is there's an opposite thought on it. Why? And again, not to pull it out and point out that you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong, and you have to see my way. It's more of I want to understand you better as a person, and I want to understand how you feel. For starters, because if you're a friend of mine, I definitely don't want to do anything that's going to upset or hurt you. But I also want to understand that there are more people in the world that think the same way that you do on this particular topic, and I want to understand that so that I can have informed conversations with people. And I can, again, not trying to have an argument with anybody, but you have people that don't feel that way.
Well, even if you liked vanilla ice cream and I preferred strawberry, that doesn't mean we don't agree on so many other things.
Well, even at the base on that one, we both like ice cream, don't we?
You got me.
And that's the way that people look at it is, I hadn't thought about it that way. I'm like, well, yeah, we both like ice cream. So you like strawberry. Okay. I like vanilla. Okay.
So the idea here is, I don't think people understand that we're all playing on the same team.
I think that's a really important distinction in it. Right now, especially with as polarized and heated as everything is, it's red versus blue. It's you versus me. It's us versus them. But if you look at the grand scheme of things, we all have to live here together. And wouldn't it make more sense to, all right, this person just got elected. It's only 4 years. If we can come together and work together for the next 4 years, make the best of the situation instead of trying to fight an uphill battle, then I think that it would be a little bit easier, especially for those of us that live in the real world over here and actually have to deal with this stuff on a day-to-day basis.
I've often found that people who wail about the injustice of things rarely take the action and effort to achieve anything.
I think you're right there too. I hadn't really thought about that, but there are a lot of people who are out there loudly proclaiming one way or the other, yet they're not doing anything within their ability to do anything about it. You know, if you're upset about something at a local level in politics, run for local politics. You might not win, but at least you're going to put your money where your mouth is.
Everyone usually has something that they agree on.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, we were just talking about the ice cream, for instance.
Yes.
Different flavors of ice cream, but we both like ice cream.
I'm going to remember that one.
Yeah, different flavors of
How
ice
about school today?
One for Missy. But that's just it, is you find a common ground in something. Even with something with regard to, and I can't believe that these words are going to come out of my mouth right now, but on the topic of abortion is such a heated topic right now. It's either pro-life or pro-abortion, but what you're not realizing is if you actually look at each of the states that have abortion regulations, that no abortion, blah, 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 if you actually look at the legislation in place, most of them do permit abortion under certain circumstances. Maybe not as openly as other states would. Whereas, you know, the states that have looser abortion regulations still have regulations. So if you look at that middle, again, that bell curve, that middle where the majority of them actually come in, people can access abortion in all 50 states. It just depends on the circumstances. And I think that if more people were educated with regard to that sort of stuff, they would realize that, oh, you're pro-lifer, but you still believe in abortion up to 24 weeks, or you still believe in abortion up to, you know, a certain extent, or you do believe in abortion in cases of rape or incest, but you just don't want to have abortion in the third trimester type of situation. So I think that if those conversations were happening more frequently without the hostility, I think that people would start to realize that, no, we are all on the same page. It's just, are we on the upper part of the page, the lower part of the page, or in the middle of it?
Well, that goes back to what we always talk about on this program, that most people make their choices based on beliefs, not facts.
Yes. And when you have things like social media that just kind of drive all of that home right there in the palm of your hand, how many people out there are looking at a tweet or an Instagram post, or that somebody's blatantly going off about this is what this is, but how many of them are actually looking up, is this really how this is? They're not. They're looking at what's going on, what they're reading right now, and they're just getting enraged by it, and they're just immediately acting to what they've seen without doing any homework.
I think that's a key term, getting enraged. That's that type of recency bias that we talk about, where we're influenced by the last thing that we see, hear, or read. And we go off on that and make that our belief.
And I know that I've done that myself too. I try to educate myself, but there are some times that, you know, maybe I've had a long day and that's just the straw that broke the camel's back type of situation. But most times, you know, again, I do try to take a step back. I try to look at it with a more mindful approach to it. And okay, is this really, or are they baiting me? Because a lot of that happens too, is that somebody will throw something out there just to get the reaction to it.
That's one of the topics that I wanted to bring up with you, Missy, because a lot of people ask baiting questions.
Very much so. I am not a fan of that, because all it does is add fuel to the fire. A lot of things get taken out of context too. And that's another thing that I don't like, is you'll ask this question and then the answer is over here, but you only take this part of the answer that takes all of the rest of it out of context. And the reason that you do that is because you want those clicks, you want those reactions, you want that immediate response, that immediate, just inciting of rage is what you're looking for. That's going to do it. Boom, there you go. You now have 150,000 new likes and follows on your social media. For what? You haven't educated anyone. You haven't done anything. All you've done is set something on fire.
We're going to be continuing our conversation on our next podcast with our insightful guest, Missy Sorg, discussing how to interact with people who perhaps have different opinions than you. So tune in next week, and tune in next week and every week for a free prescription. Fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Unplug your television and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience, we suggest that you fish without bait. Do a kindness for yourself and do a kindness for another. Forgive yourself and forgive another. Until all are free, none are free. Namaste, my friends.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.